just got back from the world up above. And I was in a special place. Actually, it was a different country. The country was called Israel. And there's a lot of history there. And I went on this trip. I went up there and they had this bus tour thing going on. And I decided I'd jump on this bus and bought me a ticket. And we had a really nice tour guide there giving us all kinds of information. Nice guy. Called himself Yuval. Yeah, everybody remembered his name because he said to us, "It's not U-Haul, it's Yuval." And nobody forgot it after that. At any rate, we went to a lot of places, and I got out this book. Actually, this is a Bible. But this Bible is a history book. It's a documentation of things that happened a long, long time ago. And it's divided into two testaments, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, you probably heard BC and AD. Well, BC means before Christ, and AD is medieval Latin, meaning Anno Domini, and means in the year of the Lord, are used to label or number years in the Julian and Gregorian calendars. This calendar era is based on the traditionally reckoned year of the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. AD, in the New Testament, begins counting years from the start of his life, and BC, the Old Testament, begins the years before the start of his life. Now, there's a push right now to change BC and AD. They want BC to be BCE, before the Common Era, and AD to become CE, which is the Common Era. Now, you're going to see that. I'm just letting you know that, because when you read something in history that goes back so ancient as this, you're going to see sometimes it's BC, BCE, but it's basically the same thing. So, that's what's happening with that. So, as long as you're here, I like to share some of the places I went. One place I like to show you, an area I went to, is the West Bank area of Israel. It's called the Dead Sea. And let me tell you something, that place was pretty awesome. And there are 3 places around the Dead Sea that are pretty interesting, including a 4th place, which the Dead Sea Scrolls. Anyway, let's talk about the Dead Sea. So what is the Dead Sea? Well, it's a sea that's full of salt, has a lot of salt in it. It's also known as the Salt Sea or the Sea of Salt, and I think there's a few other names as well. This Dead Sea is a salt lake with its main water source being the Jordan River. It borders Israel on its west shore and Jordan on its east shore. Now, it is the lowest land-based elevation on the planet Earth, and one of the world's saltiest bodies of water, being over 9.5 times saltier than the ocean. The high amount of salt makes for a harsh environment in which plants and animals cannot live, henceforth its name, the Dead Sea. It's 31 miles long and 9 miles wide at its widest point. Now, people do attempt to swim in it. However, because of the high salt content, you can't sink in the water. You can only float, which is called corking, not swimming. These corkers, as I call them, are kept within a safety barrier and are warned to prevent getting the water into your eyes and to not swallow the water because it could be harmful. It is also recommended to not go into the water at all if you have any cuts on your body. You might have a little bit of a painful experience. Now, the Dead Sea was one of the world's first health resorts, starting with Herod the Great, and has been the supplier of a wide variety of products, from asphalt for Egyptian mummification, potash for fertilizers, minerals for skincare products, and of course, salt, just to name a few. The minerals and salt harvested from the Dead Sea are the #1 economic resource for the country of Israel. And Jordan also, working with Israel, they also harvest the Dead Sea as well. However, there's a problem. The Jordan River feeds the Dead Sea. And over time, over the years, Jordan and Israel have diverted the Jordan River to other projects, or I don't know, it could be using it to, for farms or whatever. But less water, because they're doing that, is going to the Dead Sea. Meanwhile, they're harvesting these minerals and salt. They're taking a lot of water out, more water out than is now going in. So the Dead Sea has been receding, getting smaller and smaller over the years. It's a big, big problem. So in 2013, Israel and Jordan got together and they came to an agreement. They call it the Red to Dead project. And they actually signed it to get it going in 2015. And they're building this 126-mile pipeline on the Jordan side of the Dead Sea. And they're going to bring the Red Sea water into the Dead Sea. And it's a big project. They're going to desalinate stuff and put water into... Anyway, they're going to solve the problem. The Dead Sea lies at the base of the mountains in the Judean wilderness. The Judean wilderness being a long stretch of desert between northern and southern Israel. At the Dead Sea, there are 4 places of interest in the mountains that look down upon it. The first would be the cave where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. Then there's Qumran, Ein Gedi, and Masada. So, what are the Dead Sea Scrolls? Well, the Dead Sea Scrolls are ancient Jewish and Hebrew religious manuscripts documenting the Old Testament that were found in jars in around 10 to 12 Qumran caves in the Judean wilderness on the northern shore of the Dead Sea between 1946 and 1956. The initial discovery was by a Bedouin shepherd in 1946. Now, a Bedouin is a person who moves around, okay? So these are people who have tents and camels, and they go here and there through the desert, and they pitch their tent, and they live there, and then they take it down, and they go somewhere else. But anyway, the Bedouin shepherd had lost a sheep, and he's trying to find it. So he was taking rocks and throwing them in the caves to try to scare the sheep, see if it's in there, so it'll come out. Well, he threw a rock into a cave, and he heard a breaking sound. Well, what was that? So he climbed up the mountain to check it out. And he discovered a jar with a bunch of scrolls in it. Now, the sad thing is, he knew it was an antiquity. He knew it was old. So what he did, like they would all do, I guess, to make money, it's all about the money, is he took the scrolls, he didn't know what they were, and he would tear them up into pieces and took them to town, to an antiquity place, and sold them. Not for much, $30, whatever. They're priceless, these things. Well, to make a long story short, it came to somebody's attention. What's this? Oh my goodness! And they went and they found them all. And they contacted people who had bought them, and they actually put them back together. Some scrolls date back before the 1st century. That would be BC or BCE. And are in some cases word for word what the written Bible tells us today. And that's what I have in front of me now, giving validity to its text. The caves where scrolls are found are numbered. So the initial discovery by the Bedouin shepherd is cave number 1, and so on and so forth. So they can keep records of where the scrolls came from. Now, nearby the caves, an ancient settlement was found, and that's been dated back 134 to 104 BC, or BCE, depending on which one you're using. And they're calling it Qumran, this settlement, because it's so close to the Qumran caves. And the settlement they found dates back to the same time that the scrolls were written. It was occupied most of the time until 68 AD and was destroyed by the Romans during the First Jewish-Roman War, possibly as late as 73 AD. It is thought that the people called Essenes were probably the people who lived here, and they were a sect of Second Temple period Judaism that existed from the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD, and were the people responsible for storing the scrolls in the caves. The number of people that lived here have been estimated based on the size of the cemetery and the average lifespan at that time, leading to believe that the inhabitants would not have numbered more than 200 people. The excavation revealed a complex water system that had supplied water to several stepped cisterns, some quite large actually, located in various parts of the site. 2 of these cisterns were within the walls of the main building. Now, let's go on to Ein Gedi. Ein Gedi, I like that. That's probably one of my favorite. I guess I like Masada too. That was pretty interesting. But Ein Gedi, what is Ein Gedi? Well, Ein Gedi, according to the writings of Josephus, who was a Jewish military leader and historian who became a Roman citizen in 71 AD, Ein Gedi served as the capital of its own state, with excellent palm trees and balsam growing there. The date palm's fruit and the balsam plant's fragrance were essential to the village's economy. The balsam also served as a source for expensive medications. Also at Ein Gedi, you find herds of wild goats, which are called ibex, which are also mentioned, the wild goat part, in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Right here it's documented. Now, what puts Ein Gedi on the map is David was being chased by King Saul. And he hid at Ein Gedi where he met up with Saul, or Saul met up with him. Anyway, and David, by the way, he's the guy that took down Goliath with the slingshot. You know, that's the David I'm talking about. All in here. And we know the story. Well, anyway, King Saul found out about David's ability to play the harp very well, and had a messenger ask David if he would come to his fortress to soothe him whenever he was in torment by a demon. David agreed, and would soothe the king with his sweet music played on his harp. Soon afterward, David defeated the mighty Philistine giant Goliath using a sling, and his popularity began to grow. At this point, Saul had made David a permanent member of his court, and David began fighting many battles for Israel. He became the object of a fierce jealousy of Saul because of the young warrior's successes in battle and his growing popularity. This jealousy led Saul to openly declare his intention to get rid of David. Well, because he was so open about it, David heard about it and he fled, with Saul in hot pursuit for many years. However, Saul had to stop chasing David briefly to fight the Philistines, enemies of Israel. After returning from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, "David is in the desert of Ein Gedi." So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the craggy rocks, which were only accessible by wild goats. Saul came to the sheep pens along the way, and there was a cave there, and Saul went inside, not knowing that David and his men were hiding deep inside the cave. Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe as an act to show he meant Saul no harm. This story is believed to have taken place in the Dudum Cave, which is next to the David Waterfall, named for this historic event that took place there. The water from the falls drop 120 feet into a shallow pool, which is forbidden for anybody to enter. The rocky and steep hills, the caves, and the wild goats, which are called ibex, can still be found in Ein Gedi today. It's amazing. I just can't believe it. And it's in here. It's in here. Isn't it? And this was written, what? A long time ago. I'll tell you that much. At any rate, now going further south, you come to Masada. And Masada is also a historical site. It's huge. Also built by Herod the Great. Now, you've probably heard of Herod, but they called him Herod the Great because he built all this stuff. I mean, he's a builder. Palaces here, palaces there. He built a racetrack, horse racetrack. He built coliseums and theaters. The guy just built. He was build crazy. But they call him Herod the Great because of that reason. So Masada. First of all, when you go to Masada, there are two ways to get to it. It's up high on the hill. Now, they have a tram. And you can take the tram way up on the hill. And that's a nice little view as you're going up the hill. You know, see all the hillside is just dirt hills, but whatever. Or there is a trail. It's called the Snake Trail. And there's all these switchbacks, you know, like a snaky. It takes about 45 minutes to get up to the top. Now, I know people who have tried doing it. They got halfway, came back down and took the tram. So I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't want to do it. It's uphill all the way, and it's pretty far. So, Masada. Let me tell you about Masada. It's up on the high mountain, like I said, and it's south of Ein Gedi. And according to Josephus, between 37 and 31 BC, Herod the Great built a large palace fortress on the plateau as a refuge for himself in the event of a revolt, with an endless supply of food up there. However, excavations have found two palaces, and a model of what the palaces and compound could look like at that time is on display on top of the mountain there at the site. In 66 AD, a group of Jewish rebels called the Zachariae, which were a Jewish splinter group from the rebel group the Zealots, overcame the Roman garrison at Masada and took it over. After the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, additional rebels from this same group fled Jerusalem and also settled in Masada. Many of the ancient buildings at Masada have been restored from the existing ruins. A line of colored plaster shows where the original building stopped and the restored part begins. The synagogue, storehouses, and houses of the Jewish rebels have also been identified and restored. Also restored are the wall paintings of Herod's two main palaces and the Roman-style bathhouses that he built. These bathhouses had saunas and hot tubs which were heated from beneath the floor. A fire was built outside an opening of the bathhouse, and the heat blown through the opening which was under the floor. And the floor was raised above the ground by pillars called pillae, so that hot air could circulate under it. The floor consisted of a layer of tiles, followed by a layer of concrete, then another layer of tiles. There were also tile or clay flues under the walls which circulated the hot air to the room's floor and walls above. This heating system required slave labor and wood to fuel and monitor the furnace for hours. Water cisterns, 2/3 of the way up the cliff, drained the nearby ravine by an elaborate system of channels. And that explains how the rebels managed to conserve enough water for such a long time. In 73 AD, the Romans laid siege to Masada to take back possession. The Roman ex-legion surrounded Masada, building a wall completely around it, and then a siege ramp against the western face of the plateau. The high assault ramp consisted mostly of a natural spur of bedrock and was built by Jewish slaves. The ramp was complete in the spring of 73, and a giant siege tower with a battering ram was constructed and moved laboriously up the completed ramp using Jewish prisoners of war. When Roman troops entered the fortress, they discovered that its defenders, the rebels, had set all the buildings on fire except for the food storerooms and had committed mass suicide. Now, this documentation of mass suicide kind of comes into question a little bit because suicide is against Jewish law. So more than likely, they took each other's lives, and the last guy standing, now he would have to commit suicide, obviously. But the people of Masada did not want to become slaves to the Romans. And that happened. That was common. They didn't want to be a Roman slave. And you had these slaves, Jewish slaves, prisoners of war slaves, and they're building this device. They're building the ramp, the device, the ram. I mean, what were they thinking? Because their people are up there, and they're helping the Romans to get to them. Anyway, so that was the Dead Sea area. I want to tell you more about it, more of this trip to Israel. But right now, I'm done about that. Some other areas. I'm going to look up some other areas, and I'll get back to you. Very interesting. I love history. Let's see. Can't see.